I mean, I know so many people in my street now I didn't know before.
We've had staff here manning phones all the time of lockdown.
We couldn't do our normal work, but we managed to repurpose pretty much overnight to become an emergency delivery service.
For the whole of lockdown, I've been doing lockdown library.
To control the pandemic.
On this episode of East Acton Stories, Life in Lockdown, we're going to look closely at just a few examples of the resourcefulness and the solidarity that people in this community took as the pandemic raged its way through the city. Of course, it should be said that there are many more examples than those that you'll hear here. Everywhere, people took things into their own hands when other support was lacking, often. I think it is important not to place rose-tinted glasses onto this time. This pandemic is profoundly devastating. There is no doubt about that. But from within that context, I think it's important to tell the stories of how people have helped and coped and think about the wider effects that may or may not have had on the people taking part. Because otherwise we'll all just fall apart. So here we go. Episode 3, Action. First up, we're going to hear from Sophie and the Food Bank Foragers.
So Food Bank Foragers, we started it just before lockdown began, and essentially I completely copycatted a scheme which someone had done in Shepherd's Bush called the Food Bank Doorsteppers, and this wonderful lady, Margaret Blankson, set it up. Basically, it was an incredibly simple idea. You got leaflets printed up and then went round houses on one day and dropped the leaflets off. And the leaflet said you were collecting for the Ealing Food Bank and gave a list of foods that were needed and basically said, we'll be back tomorrow. And if you've got anything spare, please leave it on your doorstep. And so the next day we went round all of the places that we'd been the day before and picked up overwhelming quantities of food, and people were so generous. It was just, it was extraordinary, quite extraordinary. And we started off with 15 of us, and by the end of the time we were up to 30, and we were dropping about 3,000 leaflets a time and picking up kind of about 2 tons of food. Some of it was going to the Ealing Food Bank, and then some of it was going to a few other projects which we found out about, which were a bit more local. We also went to the Acton Gardens Community Centre and dropped there, and then we went to the Ealing Soup Kitchen. But it was the 2 ones that were close to here that were very close to my heart, because you just felt that it was sort of coming from here and going to here.
So my name is Lizzie Hepworth and I work at Old Oak Primary School. For the whole of lockdown, I've been doing lockdown library in the Key Stage 1 playground. So initially, one of the other teachers, Miss Lynch, who's a Key Stage 2 teacher, she noticed in her community people were leaving books out on the walls outside their houses. I imagine because they can't get to charity shops. They've had a long time to sort through things. And so she reached out to her community and asked if people wanted to donate books for us to redistribute to our children. So then a few other teachers did that as well. We've collected about 1,000 books now. We've also had donations from the Children's Book Project, which is not too far from here, and they donated loads of bundles for us to give out to the children, as well as some funding and some local grants as well, so that's been fabulous. So we've purchased some new ones as well.
Next up, you're going to hear from Richard, one of the co-founders of Bikeworks, but he'll tell you about that. I spoke to him at a socially distanced street party, which is why it's quite noisy, but we're going to come to that next episode.
Well, Bikeworks is a community interest company, and we deliver cycling to people who wouldn't normally cycle, in a nutshell. So we were knocked sideways like everybody else by COVID. We couldn't do our normal work, but we managed to repurpose pretty much overnight to become an emergency delivery service.
Wow.
We were delivering for food banks to vulnerable people who couldn't go out, so we would taking their shopping and meals to them. We were delivering for pharmacies. We were delivering testing kits, that sort of thing, for the GPs. So we did 2 or 3 months work like that on budgets that had previously been approved for different projects, but obviously we didn't know COVID was coming. So now we're just getting back on our feet and we've got to find new funding to start delivering our the projects we had in mind at the start of the year.
With Bubble and Squeak, have you been involved in some of the deliveries and helping out?
Yeah, so
Just tell me a bit about how that's been.
Yeah, definitely. I'm here every Monday and Tuesday. We work with the Felix Project and City Harvest. So what they do, they get surplus food, or whether it's a regular fruits and veg. So there's a lot of market stalls or a lot of shops, for example, Marks and Spencer's, or even some Sainsbury's as well. If they get an apple that is misshaped, they can't sell it, so they end up giving it to projects like the Felix Project.
That's
so
great.
What we were doing here is I have around 20 to 25 families in the local community, mainly from the Old Oak Primary School, but I'm sure there are a few other people that are not from the primary school but in the local community, and we would deliver food packages to them. So when I get the delivery on a Monday, I'm like, okay, what have I got? How am I going to separate it? And then also working out what families would benefit from what. So we have a very big Muslim community in the area as well, and they're only going to eat halal foods, and there are other members in the community that they would only use certain products. So I had to kind of understand the families and work out what they're going to use, what's going to benefit them. I'd put it into one of the crates. We also get meals as well. They're just for the kids that are off school at the moment, because a lot of kids they get their breakfast from the school and then they also get their lunch. I can understand why projects like this are imperative for families as well, because what are they gonna do? Like, they have no other option. Everybody struggles, like everybody goes through struggles, and that's how it is.
I think that the way that people have pulled together has been fabulous. I think the work that the school staff have done, I think the work that Bubble and Squeak have done has enabled us not only to support families with food and that kind of support, but also means that we've been checking in with families, making sure that they're okay. We've had staff here manning phones all the time of lockdown, so when people have phoned in with concerns or issues or anxieties, they've spoken to a person that they're familiar with in the school. So that's been really positive.
Even the driving around to go and collect books from people that have donated them, even just like seeing new people, having chats with people, that was quite nice to get out of the house. But then especially here on Fridays, seeing lots of kids that either I currently teach but haven't seen, or children I used to teach when they were in year one, and like the year sixers who've just left, they were my first class. So it was really nice to, see children that I have taught, but also children I've never taught, and parents I've never met as well. And you could tell, especially the first few weeks, like the human contact between adults. If they're at home and they've 3 or 4 children and they're the only people they're seeing, or they're trying to work from home too, actually just coming and having a chat with a familiar face in a familiar place, you could tell it meant a lot to them, and it was quite nice for me too. It was really good, and seeing the children, and actually, you've never seen them so excited about books, because now it means more than it's ever meant before. They take them for granted, I mean, we all do. But it's really helped, and certainly families who say they'll have got through this book by the end of the day. I can't afford to be buying books like that for them all the time. So yeah, it's been a really worthwhile and a really enjoyable experience.
Well, positives from COVID-19. I don't know. I suppose it depends where you're coming from. I mean, I think that it's been absolutely appalling for so many people. But I have to say that the community spirit that has been shown through it has been really, really heartwarming. I mean, I know so many people in my street now I didn't know before, and I met so many people whilst we were doing this. And it was the way that everybody wanted to help everybody else, I think was extraordinary. It's just amazing, and I think I hope that it continues, and that people take it on and don't get quite so caught up in their own lives, and just remember that there are other people out there. It was a really special experience, and I think that for all of us who were doing it and were doing the picking up, it was incredibly it was just a very good feeling. It was a good feeling. You felt that you were doing something that was sort of a bit useful. And my God, did one feel useless when it was all going on. We had some wonderful conversations with people who we picked up from. I think that quite a few of the people who were doing it were socially isolating, and they were on their own. And it was a chance for them to talk to other people, which I think was a really good side of it. I think that the people who were picking food up from got a benefit from it. A lot of them used to hand into churches or take it out of the food bank, and all of these sort of avenues had closed, and so it made it very easy for them to be able to donate food. We ran the service for about 12 weeks. Well, it was exactly 12 weeks. We started about a week before lockdown, and carried it through. The bulk of it became harder and harder towards the end. A combination of the people who were helping me were having to, their lives were getting back to normal again. Some of them were going back to work. They just became busier, so that they didn't necessarily have the time free to be able to do it. And also, we were picking up less donations. I mean, we were probably, towards the end, we were probably picking up about half what we were picking up at the beginning. And I think it was a combination of, maybe donor fatigue, and everybody getting on with their busy lives too. And so they weren't sort of going down to the shops. And it was interesting watching how it changed from when we were doing it. So at the beginning, I think it was stuff that people had already got stored in their cupboards. And then as the weeks went on, people started properly going and doing shops for it. I mean, some people were just so generous. There's someone who lives down the road from me, and he did 2 £300 shops. I mean, he went, did an entire food order completely for us. It was amazing. And then were people who's left bags and bags of food on their doorsteps, often the people who could ill afford it. And having spoken to quite a number of people, I think that there was an element of knowing what it felt like, knowing how close, how easy it was to get to the point where you needed to get food from a food bank, and people were extraordinarily generous.
East Acton Stories Life in Lockdown was made by me, Eleanor Henderson, produced by the wonderful Eleanor Harrington, Old Oak Community Centre and the Peabody Trust, with generous support from United in Hammersmith and Fulham. See you next time.